Well, hello and welcome to PM Express, the London edition. My name is Nanan Sakwao the Fourth, and I'm getting excited. I'm talking to so many Ghanaians who are doing absolutely wonderful things. Ghanaians who you think, why are they, using their brains to help the Queen rather than President Mahama? You never know. Maybe throughout this interview, they might be convinced and come home. But today I'm looking at real estate, and I'm also looking at linking businesses in the UK and Ghana. You know who I'm talking to? I'm talking a wonderful, wonderful Ghanaian lady called Louise Amasewa Birchie. Now, she is the CEO of Tailored Moves. We're going to find out what Tailored Move does, and we'll look at what's the real estate business in the UK compared to the one we have back home. Where do we bridge it? Especially affordable housing. Do they also have affordable housing issues here? And what is affordable anyway? Who knows? But Louise, welcome to my show.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you.
And nice to, take time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
But first of all, Tailored Moves. I like the name. What does he do apart from real estate? Because I know they do real estate, right?
Okay. Yeah. Well, the reason why it's Tailored Moves is because it actually tailors its services to the actual individual, private individual, or commercial corporate companies. So yes, we're involved in real estate. We're involved in relocations. We also provide concierge services, which means the client can request any kind of service from private jets through to yachts to stay on, or through to somebody doing their shopping, cleaning their houses. So at the high level or even at the mundane level. So that's all the corporate, all the concierge services on that front. And then in addition to that, we get involved in what we call high value ticket items. So if a client, for instance, wants to sell a vessel, we have the network and the connections to actually make that happen.
I want to sell my ship.
That sounds brilliant. I'll sell it for you.
Oh, so I can basically ring Tailored Moves and say, look, I need a private jet to Ghana, maybe in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then you find me.
Yes, I'll be able to get that for you quite easily.
I see.
I had a client contact me. Normally when they come to stay in London, they stay at a hotel. And on this particular occasion, what they wanted to do was stay in a yacht for 2 weeks. So I organised a yacht next to Abramovich because it was throughout the Olympics. Mm-hmm. So yes, we found somewhere not as close to Abramovich as he would have liked, but it was close enough.
Well, that's exciting. That's exciting. Now, so do you only do high-end property, or you do, normal property as well? My type of property.
Well, what's normal property first?
Well, let's say £200,000 property.
Not really. No, not really.
Not really.
I can get involved, but most of the clients that I have are sort of higher end.
Okay.
But if I do, that doesn't mean that if I get somebody who wants a £500,000 house, that I wouldn't try and see if I can find them something. Yes.
That's getting exciting. Do you do only commercial, or you do residential as well?
I'm involved primarily in residential, but I also get involved in commercial.
Okay.
Well. So office blocks for conversions, or hotels as well, but mainly central London.
Mainly central London?
Mainly in central.
So that's like prime.
Yes.
We go back home and, our property prices in Ghana now, is literally skyrocketing. I mean, you could buy an apartment for, $1 million. And we're talking Ghana, where the minimum wage is 6 Ghana cedis a day. So that's minimum wage is £1 a day, And you can still buy a house for $1 million. I'm wondering, your minimum wage here compared to your high-end houses, and how affordable are your houses?
I think you'd be surprised to learn that we probably have exactly the same sort of issue here, mm-hmm. Probably on a different scale, but the actual discrepancy is exactly the same. You have people now who are having to stay at home for longer periods of time, so you've got 30-year-olds who are staying with their parents, and if they want to get on the property ladder, they need to use various strategies from buying it with either their partners or their friends, to borrowing money from their parents in order to just be able to get the deposit to do so, just because the level of prices here is actually that high. Which is pretty much the same in Ghana. The wages do not necessarily reflect the cost of housing.
Sure.
And the cost of housing is so much higher than the wages. So it's pretty much the same sort of thing. And I think perhaps here it's slightly better managed in a way than back home. But I think the issue is
About the same.
Yeah.
Have you got any housing deficits as well here, or there isn't?
Oh yeah, because we've got such an influx of, in quotes unquotes, foreigners coming in.
The Eastern Europeans.
Eastern Europeans, as you know. So yes, you know, London has what we are calling a housing crisis. And where I guess where the issue here is different as well is the fact that because we attract quite a lot, London attracts quite a lot of the overseas market, the wealthy market. So what you'll find is that in prime central London, when it comes to around 6, 7 o'clock, or you can go to a whole street and there'll be no lights on. And the reason for that is you've got the wealthy people who have bought their houses and they're only there for about 2-3 weeks of a year, and the house is pretty much left empty. And at the same time, you've got quite a lot of people who require housing to live in. So it's an interesting dynamic, but it's certainly happening.
You're talking about commercial properties, being converted. What's the planning issues like? Because we have the laws of planning regulations in Ghana, but then it's very difficult monitoring them. Therefore, you could have a church spring up where it's not supposed to spring up and stuff like that. What are your rules here? Can can I sneak my mosque in a residential area or sneak my church into a residential area? How are regulations here?
Very strict. And you would really get into quite a bit of trouble to try and circumvent planning rules and planning laws. And they have the powers to actually, whether you have completed it and spent millions of pounds on it or not, they have the power to actually get you to pull the whole thing down.
Now we have this rule that if you can quickly build up to the lintel level, then you can basically debate your way out of the issue, whatever it is that you bring. Do you have any loophole here where
not that I know of.
you could quickly sneak in and get to the roofing level and tell the judge, please look, I'm at the roofing level?
No, they're very strict and they're very rigid here, and I think in certain instances it's for good reason, and it kind of brings about certain disciplines, I think, as well. So it just means that certainly one can make an argument for one thing or the other, but there's very, very little room for manoeuvre. You either do it according to the rules or you don't. So yeah, if you don't, there's a high price to pay, let's say.
But off camera, you were telling me that even the materials that go into it, they sort of regulate the materials.
Yes, in certain areas, depending on where you're building, if there's a kind of a prevalence of a particular type of material, if there's a prevalence of a particular type of style in that area, then you have to actually sort of merge with that and conform. And if you don't, then chances are getting the planning in the first place will not happen.
Is it a very competitive market?
Yes, it is. I think high-end you do, and it is, just because you have a lot of people chasing after the same sorts of things. You've got developers who need to build and sell, and when they sell, it's not necessarily to the market here, it's also to the foreign market. So for instance, earlier you were speaking about new builds. So when there's a new build here, one of the big central London new build agencies I know quite well, then they were building units of about 95 in and around central London, and I actually wanted to get some for some of my clients. By the time they'd completed the building, all of it had been sold. Where had it been sold? In the Middle East, and that's what happens.
Wow.
Yeah, so because of that influx, there is a lot of competition. There's kind of price as well. So once upon a time, you could do what is called buying off-plan. And off-plan is you buy before the building is completed, and as such, that means you get anything from 10 to 25% discount. Now you just will not get that, just because house builders are very confident that if they don't sell it in the home market, market, they'll actually sell it in any other foreign markets. So,
Wow,
yeah.
so they're driving prices up.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Here, you know, for those of us in the know, as it were, we say foreign money is a lot cheaper than indigenous.
Foreign money is cheaper. Yeah, because I knew that if you buy off plan, you used to be able to buy cheaper. Now it's the list price, and take it or leave it.
Or not at all.
Are there any room for negotiations, or?
You can do, but you're looking at most 5% if you're lucky.
Wow.
But by the time it's sort of advertised to those of us here, as I've said earlier, most of them will have gone. They will have gone.
All the top floor apartments and all the plush ones are all taken.
All gone. In fact, even the non-plush ones.
I see.
Yeah.
Now, you're Ghanaian, but born here. Do you still have links in Ghana?
Yes, I do. Most of my family are out there.
Okay. You visit?
Irregularly.
But you're too busy chasing Arab money. You won't get time to come. You're too busy chasing Arab. Wow. So what's the new phase? I mean, what's the UK doing to catch up or solve its housing problem?
I was actually a part of what is called a round table at the London Chamber of Commerce for just those issues. And it's around different grants and planning changes to allow more by way of, you know, house building. Now, what they're finding is that even if they do that, so for instance in the borough of Westminster, which is a central London borough, what they were doing was allowing more office blocks to be bought and changed into residential. But what they're finding is you're getting the high-end developers, those that I cater for, who would buy that sort of building, and they would certainly do it up. But because of the cost, it actually prices out the indigenous population, and it gets sold outside of London anyway.
So then defeats the whole object.
So it defeats the object, yes. So the issue is actually very complicated.
So is there a plan B to say that maybe if you buy this building, maybe 25% of it should be sold at this price, or is there anything? I
mean, they're doing different sorts of things to make housing affordable. So there's shared ownership, for instance, and the idea of shared ownership is that if a house is worth, or flat is worth 200,000 because of shared ownership, so they can either own it with a housing association, and their housing associations are actually quite good like that, because they're the ones who build the affordable housing. But what will then happen is to allow an individual to have some kind of ownership as well. If the house is worth 200,000, it can be done in such a way that the house builder owns 50% and the house buyer owns 50%. So rather than them having to pay 200,000 for the building, they end up paying 100,000 for the building, and the increments over time is shared equally between the two. And
do you pay rent for the other part you don't owe, or you just pay mortgage for the part you owe?
They just pay the mortgage for the part they owe.
Okay, and then if there's any equity, you split it?
You split it, yes.
That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, it's good enough a scheme, but I think ultimately our mentality here is everybody wants to own their own piece of land, as it were. So, yeah.
I'm going to take a break here, and when I come back, I want to find out this shared ownership thing. So let's say I build a house, right, and it's 200,000, but you only buy 100,000 of it, and therefore you're paying your bankers, the 100,000. I'm probably also paying my bankers the 100,000, and you're living in it. And we're just waiting for the equity until, but I built it. Won't I let you rent my part of the 100 and then you pay the mortgage? Let's see how it works. Stay tuned. Well, hello and welcome back to this very educative interview, if I may say, trying to find out how the real estate is over here in the UK and compare it to back home. Pretty much in the same soup, just on different levels, and before the break, this shared ownership thing, I think was quite exciting. But I'm looking as if I am a real estate company and I built a house which is valued at 200,000. And I must say, well, you came and just bought 100,000 of that house. So you moved in, so you're living in it. So I keep 100,000, you keep 100,000. If next year, thanks be to God, the house moves to 400,000, I keep the 100, you keep the 100, and we're all happy. If the house then drops to maybe 150,000, then we are in big waters. So what I'm trying to find out is, while you are living in a house that are built, but you're only paying the half, aren't you going to rent my half as well?
You see, there's all of this is sorted out at the beginning. So it's all contractual. Now, from the house builder's perspective, they get help from the government to do this sort of thing in the first place. So it's normally government subsidised in some way or the other.
Okay.
And then all the kind of finer details of it are usually sort of worked out at the beginning. So what they will be handing interested parties will be a contract that's already been thought through, and that gives that person the opportunity to either sort of say, yes, I agree with this clause, or I don't agree with this clause. And you know, sometimes there's some level of negotiation in it, and sometimes there isn't. Now ultimately it's up to the potential buyer to make a decision as to whether or not, well, yes, they're living in the house, but ultimately the reason why they've taken that is they can't afford. If they could afford to pay for a mortgage of 200, then they would buy their own house and not have to share the equity with somebody else. It's because they cannot afford it. This is why they're actually having to do this sort of shared ownership thing. So it has to be worked out in a way that is mutually beneficial, if you will, for everybody.
So are people now moving out of central London to then go into the outskirts? Because the way you're talking, I mean, people are being priced out of the city.
Oh, definitely, especially with changes that have come in with regards to housing benefits as well. Once upon a time, you could have a family living in central London on housing benefits, to be honest with you, because there was no cap on how much the councils or the boroughs were willing to pay for a particular house. And about 2 years ago, all of that changed. In fact, slightly longer perhaps, where housing, the council actually changed all of that. So every house, so if it's a one bed, is the benefit you will get is capped at, I think now it's about 700. And then it all goes up in bands. So one bedroom house, 2 bedroom house, 3 bedroom house, all have a cap. So
I see. Let me explain that to Ghanaian viewers. Now, what happens is in the UK is that if you are unemployed and you don't have work, the state will pay your rent for you. Now, back then, if I happen to live in, let's say, Cantonment, in Ghana, which is very expensive, and I lost my job, the state will then call my landlord and pay the rent on my behalf. So if they cap it, so let's say in Ghana, the state decided that, listen, for a one-bedroom house, all I'm going to give you is 700 cedis a month. You then have to move to find a house that's 700 cedis a month, because if you live in Cantonment, and being that is posh, and your landlord wants 2,000 cedis a month, you then have to come up with the difference to live there. So it means as soon as you lose your job, you need to check out of the city. Whoa.
You can afford it yourself. So that was a very big paradigm shift, I think, for the UK, because it hadn't been like that before.
I guess it might have saved the state a lot of money.
That was the reason why they did it.
But would that not then push the prices, you know, the likes of, let's say, Milton Keynes and Luton and Reading, which is sort of outside of the inner London, prices then will start going up, thinking, well, you're coming here. You know, I don't know, did it affect the prices of those areas?
Not necessarily, not as far as I know, because, you know, market forces also come into play. You can't say just because there are loads of people coming in, we're just going to lift up the price willy-nilly, because people will just not tolerate that. A house is worth, having said that, a house is worth as much as anybody is willing to pay for it. But I think if such boroughs started doing that, then what a lot of people would do would just go elsewhere in order to be able to live. So yeah, I think it's also market forces, supply and demand as well.
I mean, prior to, you know, capping, let's say, a one-bedroom flat at £700 a month, prior to that, if the landlord wanted 2,000, the council just went ahead and paid it.
Yeah, as long as you were entitled to housing benefit. Yeah.
Wow. Isn't that beautiful, my Ghanaian viewers? Can you imagine you lose your job and the state decides to pay for your rent for you? be a good policy to have back home, but not yet. You know, we're working towards it.
But you'd need to go through certain hoops. They didn't just hand it to you just like that. You'd need to go through what they call means testing. So you'd be means tested for it. So if your means definitely did not fit, then yeah, they would.
Trust me, you have a few guys who won't go through the means, don't we? We have a few guys. Now, one thing is building technology. I'm wondering if there is any sort of building technology idea in the UK to make building cheaper, because we back home in Ghana it's all cement. So as soon as the prices go up, we're in trouble. We don't believe in clay, we don't believe in plaster wood, we don't believe in wood. It's all cement and iron rods. So every house is literally a fortress. And so it makes building quite expensive. I don't know if there's, you know, have you guys developed any building makes it cheaper? Because I know you guys use a lot of plasterboard to divide rather than just concreting the whole house, and it brings the cost down. Are there any other technology to make it cheaper that we can steal from?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, my work with Direct Access Ghana, that's what we're looking into. We're actually looking to, researching that. But over here, it's pretty much the things you've mentioned. And also, I guess, sort of more around sort of building innovations as well. So that sort of talks about the building materials as much as the way in which one builds. So, for instance, traditionally we had brick builders. So you had a bricklayer, who would actually stand there and build the house brick by brick. But now there are different kind of technologies one can employ, like prefab housing, or kind of shelled housing, or there are different types of designs. There are eco designs as well that are coming out quite strongly over here as well. And the good thing about things like that is, which is something that is probably applicable in Ghana with eco housing and green building, as they say. You'll get grants for doing things like that. Here we also have things like solar panels. If you use a solar panel as well, there's a certain amount of money that you get back, because it means that you're not putting as much tax on electricity and that sort of thing. So yeah, there are various ways of doing various things, and so it's not just the material.
If I had maybe 30% solar energy in my house, the council within the house where the house is would give me something back for not depending too much on electricity.
Yeah.
That's a good incentive.
It is. If you have solar panels, definitely you get a grant from the government for using solar panels. Yeah. So for one of my clients that I was working with was actually building about a 500 unit student housing in Coventry, and we kind of worked out a deal whereby if he used solar panels, he would be getting something in the region of about £1 million back.
Wow.
So yeah, as long as it's sort of
So take it and stay off the electricity grid.
Exactly. Yeah, something like that.
That's a thought. Yeah. That's a thought.
So there are loads of different sort of innovations and things and grants and stuff like that one can plug into.
I mean, I think that's one. Now direct access. Briefly, I think you introduce business here, or you link businesses from the UK to Ghana, or from the world to Ghana. So maybe that's one area you want to look at, affordable houses, because there's a huge gap where there isn't, a lack at the top, but the bottom bit, we're really struggling. And most real estate don't want to venture there. They just want to build their plush house, sell 2 units, make a killing, rather than
Loads of little ones.
So I'm thinking, since you can tailor a move in that direction.
I will tailor a move to that direction. Well, yes, and joking aside, this is something that Direct Access Ghana is looking into. We're looking into different sort of, be it building materials or innovative ways of building, new building technologies, to actually look at ways in which we can actually drop the price of building a 1-bed, 2-bed, or even 3-bed, and sort of be able to do it on a sufficiently large scale. I mean, the research is still quite nascent. We haven't sort of completed it as yet, but it is going to be looking at sort of different building technologies sort of globally to see which one best suits and which one will deliver affordable housing in Ghana. Yeah.
I mean, affordable housing, even though affordable is quite relative, but if the price is, fairly down, sub $100,000, we are lacking in that area. If you could come really down and you can really deliver a quality house, I am pretty sure there will be more than enough demand for it.
They'll bite off our hands.
And I am pretty much sure. Now, one issue we have in Ghana is who owns this land and who owns that land. It was for my grandfather. Oh no, he married my grandmother, therefore it's now for my grandmother. Well, my grandmother divorced and then married, and you never know who owns the land.
Yeah.
Do you have land issues here as to who owns this land and who doesn't own that land?
Not very often, again, because I guess our sort of land registrations and land titles go back many years. You do get neighbours dispute, no doubt about that. Where
my fence wall. Yeah, you're eating into 2 feet of my. Your fence wall is 2 feet into my garden.
You know it very well. So yes, you certainly get that, but it's very rare in my experience anyway, and I stand to be corrected. In my experience, where you'll have a house where you've got two people, as I've heard happen in Ghana, where you've got two people laying claim to that, because once you bought it, it is registered. And this is where kind of land registrations and titles actually come into place and records are kept. So yeah, it's actually the legal system in managing that, the planning system in managing that, the sort of whole marking system for all of that are pretty advanced. So it's not, as far as I know, very often you get disputes along those lines.
Now, at the moment you're running out of residential homes. And you have areas where are demarcated to be either shops or something. Are you able to say, look, this is an office building, but I need to change it into a residential area? I mean, are you able to do that, or they'll say, look, forget it, it's an office, it stays an office?
Yeah, you go through again the whole kind of planning procedure, and that is called sort of change of use, where you're actually changing a particular building's use to a different type of use. So you might say, well, this is, and a couple of years ago, several years ago, we had a lot of that actually, where they seem to have tackled churches. So a lot of churches were sitting empty. So what they did, a lot of the traditional churches anyway were sitting empty, so they converted all of them into sort of into residentials. So there's a lot of that happening. But having said that, you have green. We have different demarcations here. We've got green belt, which is it has to stay green. We've got they're actually about to be to bring in what is called amber belt, but we also have brown belt sites, and such sites are sort of easier to develop than say green belt. So yeah, we've got different demarcations, as well as actually taking what is already in place and making it or giving it a different uses.
I'm going to take a break here, and then when I come back, I just want to find out, can I just buy a plot and build my house just like we do at home in Ghana? Everybody just goes see the chief, get a plot or 2 plots, build your house, be done with it. Or do I by all means have to buy one that's already been built? Stay tuned. Well, hello and welcome back, and having a heart-to-heart with the CEO of Tailored Moves. I'm trying to get her to tailor a move to Ghana. Why not? We need all our brains back home. Now, before the break, I was just wondering, could I just buy a plot of land from the chief and wall it and build my house on it?
Well, you can buy a plot of land, not necessarily from the chief though, just from the owner. I mean, ultimately, yes, there are plots to be bought here. There was a major scam actually that happened over here a while back, and that wasn't because the lands were not titled or were not properly owned, but what it was that people were buying green belt sites and then selling it on by saying that they already had planning, or planning had been approved for it. Because remember what I was saying before, we're very strict on planning. So if you're going to get a green belt site, it will be pretty useless to you unless you have planning to actually build on it. So we had quite a lot of that, but ultimately here...
You could graze your sheep on it.
I could if I had sheep. So here what you can do is, if you've seen a plot of land, that you're in. And what people were doing is there are certain areas in London where they've got very, very big gardens. And those gardens are big enough, for instance, for somebody to come buy a certain section of it, build a house, and then, you know, have their own garden as well. So you get that happening quite a lot.
Okay.
You get quite a lot of sharp-eyed property developers who would spot that, okay, you know, it looks like I don't know, a 3-bed house can be put here, or a 2-bed house, or something like that, as long as obviously it conforms with the other houses in the building, on the road, it should be fine. So yes, you can do that, but really there wouldn't be an issue with regards to ownership, and it really is a question of you negotiating and speaking to the seller, as in the owner. Now,
so who owns lands here? Is it in Ghana? 80% of the land belongs to stews, skins, and families. 80%, 20% by the state. So, I mean, who owns land in the UK? Individuals or states? Or?
It's a mixture of both, and it depends on what kind of building, what kind of site you're talking about. It may well be that, and this is something that's interesting here, I think anyway, where you have a block of flats, and all you are is a lessee, yeah. So you own the flat, but you don't own the ground upon which the flat is built. So the ground upon which the flat is built, or the plot of land upon which the flat is built, is owned by freeholders, and that freeholder is the one who has a right to actually charge you for the fact that you've got your flat sitting on their land. So that's something you pay for, called ground rent. And then in addition to that, you also pay for the lease of that flat. So you've got sort of two, though you own the flat, the block you don't own, nor do you own the ground upon which the flat is built.
So you pay for the block and then you pay for the ground?
Yes.
Or if you're upset, you can just move your flat away. You know, just say, I'm upset, just forget it.
If it was doable, I think a lot of people
just give me a big
would.
truck. I'm fed up and I'm moving out. So once you, other things, once you own, I mean, so you're talking about the ground rent, then you have, because you're in a block, you pay for that. And then you have to pay the council too for being in the area.
Yes.
I mean, you guys do.
We pay a lot.
You pay a lot.
We pay through the nose, as the saying goes, through the nose. Yeah.
And they're quite rigid at collecting their money still.
Oh yes, these are. So I'm just trying to remember the term now. That there are certain debts that you can do something about, and there are certain debts that you can't. Priority debts, that's it. So it's a priority debt, and it's not discretionary. So that means that unless you're dead, you pay for it.
Wow. Wow. Now, direct access. I'm interested in direct access. And I must say, I was a director of direct access. What's the vision behind direct access, and what's going to do?
I think I'm sort of often surprised by how expansive that vision can be. Ultimately, it's really to bring in foreign investors into Ghana. It's to help with the development of Ghana, development of the country, and it's not just development for the sake of development, but to ensure skills transfer, to ensure training, to ensure cross-fertilization of ideas, and to ensure innovation as well, by actually bringing sort of foreign companies into the country. And the whole idea of that is you don't just bring them in. When they come, whatever it is they're doing, the idea is to ensure that the companies we partner with actually train the people on the ground to be able to do the job. Because if they come, do what they need to do, and then go, then there's a whole issue around maintenance. And then there's a whole issue around sort of being able to sort of replicate that as well. So that's that aspect of it, which is quite good. And it also operates across sectors. So we will look at oil and gas, we will look at housing, as I was saying earlier, we will look at gold, we will look at oil, we will look at... So we're pretty much agriculture is a pretty important thing. One of the things we're looking at is bringing private equity partners into Ghana. So these are people who have already stated they have an interest in Ghana.
Good evening, Minister. You mentioned about the desire to double the generating capacity in Ghana, and I was wondering about whether there's much thought about investing in renewable energy. I mean, you mentioned about hydroelectric, but say wind or solar or other kinds of renewable energy.
They've stated that they have an interest, they have money, and they can prove that they have money to invest, and they're very clear about which sectors they want to invest in. And the idea is to actually bring the two of them together. So that's what we're doing as well, and then sort of bring some, which I won't say yet, but we've got some very innovative ideas to sort of bring into London, to bring into Ghana as well. So yeah.
I mean, I'm very particularly interested about skills transfer. I say so because most of our major things we do, gold mining, major engineering, and any time there's a need to do something, you need to go and reach out for some foreign company to come. And then you say, look, we've been doing this thing for so long, and by now, some skills should have been transferred to us so that we could have handled it ourselves. Now, if you, maybe this has been attractive for the foreigner, knowing that, I'm going to go in now because they're always going to need me. If you change the rules and say, listen, you got to train whoever you meet within the next 3 years, they should be able to do what you bring, they probably say, oh, no, then I'm not going to go because that's going to be the end of me. Because now you're not, you're tightening the noose, whereas the guys before us has really left the noose quite open.
Not necessarily. I mean, what Direct Access aims to do is to partner with companies who understand things like corporate responsibility and social responsibility, and who also have the sort of mindset and approach that we do. I mean, all things being equal, times have moved on a little bit, and the mentality that we had initially, that is, let the foreigners come in and take over, and we're fine with it. We've kind of moved on by the grace of God, as it were, and we're sort of pretty sure that we want to be sort of overseers, as it were, of our own destinies. So I think companies also have a role to play in ensuring that they don't go in there from they will have a real reputational risk now if they went in there and effectively trashed whatever it was they were doing, took and left in a way they sort of just didn't have back in the day, as we say. In this day and age, any one person can pick up a corporate organization who has misbehaved and just blow the whole thing out of proportion. So.
See, I'm just saying that, like most of the companies now there, export their profits back, and forever they'll be exporting their profit because they put a capital in there, and for life they'll say, because we put our capital in there, we need to take our profit back. And the proper thing to do is what you say, probably keep some of the profit, train people, transfer technology. If these new guys coming in say, hold on, but they are big boys down there not conforming to these laws and they are still making the huge profits, why should we go in and make a little profit when they are doing that? I mean, do you have boys or people who are prepared to slash their profit in the name of corporate social responsibility?
I think in this day and age, yes. Obviously, any investor is interested in making sure they're making their profit. But there's a difference between sort of making a profit and just being plain greedy. And I think in terms of the kind of PR and reputational risk that could come from something like that. If you look at a lot of the Greenpeace, for instance, campaigns, they cause real damage to any corporate body, and ultimately that would cause them to lose money anyway. So it is worth their while to make sure that when they go in there, they go in there with the right sort of mindset and the right approach, because yes, they can't go in there and try and grab as much money as they can, but as long and as soon as that kind of becomes a public thing, they end up losing money anyway, because it'll hit their share prices.
You've lived and worked in the UK, so systems and everything sort of work like clockwork. You have a system where even when you're going to help someone, they ask you, what's in it for me? How frustrating is that for you, and how determined are you to say, I don't care, what he does. He can delay my letter for 2 weeks. I'll still pursue this thing.
Now that's a very interesting question. That one you got me. You really got me on that one. Well, I would. I mean, ultimately it's about the whole experience of it as well. But it's also about ensuring that the bigger picture, and that is, I have a goal. And I have an objective as a person and also as a part of an organisation, and that is, this is what we want to achieve, as much for the betterment of ourselves as for our nation. So yes, it is worth sort of pursuing, finding different ways of working around it.
What's your method? I am an Arab sheikh, and I want to go and set up a matches factory in Ghana. Do you bring sort of a matches investor from Ghana to the UK to talk to this Arab sheikh, or do you take the Arab sheikh to Ghana to meet the matches investor?
Both. I think ultimately there's an initial consultation that needs to happen between ourselves and the Arab sheikh. So yes, those conversations will happen. There'll obviously be a bit of work and detailed sort of research and whatever else that needs to happen. After that, there will be, if you will, a kind of a trade mission where we take them out there to show them what is out there and take them through, obviously, a process and the methodology.
If somebody's in Ghana and says, look, I really need somebody to come and help, so we set up this big poultry farm, can they ring Direct Access to say, listen, Direct Access, this is my land, or this is my money, or this is what I have, and I need somebody to partner with do this? Or is it always from the bigger world to the smaller world?
Oh, not necessarily. Yeah, it works both ways. Effectively, what you're talking about is a JV partner. Yeah, so you need a joint venture partner. And as long as we have the information we need, it sort of gives us the remit and the mandate to effectively go out there and find them a joint venture partner, basically.
Okay.
So that it's doable across the board.
It goes both ways. Have you done any deals yet?
There's a good few we're looking into across sectors. So we're looking into housing, affordable housing. So we've got a
That's very welcome. I mean, that's very welcome.
We've got a couple of affordable housing contractors that we're talking to, and we're still talking to. We've got some agricultural interests that we're looking at. We're looking at quite a lot of different types of funding across hotels, from hotels through to car parks, through to bridges, through to just straightforward funding, where you've got a startup and that startup just needs a funding partner, so a JV partner, but just on an equity basis. But we can also find them a partner who can bring in equity and bring in the expertise as well. It all depends on what the client is looking for. Beautiful. So yeah, it's interesting.
And it seems it's going to get bigger.
Yeah, I think it definitely has the potential to do that, just because of the sheer scale of some of the things that we would like to do as well.
And she's close to money. she's sold enough houses to them, enough to convince them to bring them home. Well, Amasewa, thank you very much for talking to us. And folks, as I said, PM London edition is getting more exciting, and we're talking to all these beautiful Ghanaians all living in London doing wonderful things. Hopefully through the show we get them all back home. Thank you very much to Abiam Technology Institute in Kaswa, Abiam Productions, who have been very kind to us, lending us a crew and everything. And stay tuned, because there are more interviews coming. Tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again.